We turn now to a leader and expert in canon law, Portland, Maine Bishop Robert Deeley, to give us his perspective on these changes. Bishop Deeley, thank you for joining us today. I have a couple of questions for you. It's great to see you too. How do these revisions to canon law impact the United States? I know we were chatting a little bit about some of the realities with these changes, that they're not just things that are coming out of thin air. They've been in the works for a long time.
They have been. I mean, these are, in many cases, these are things which have already been part of the documents, particularly around the sex abuse matters. Those have been in the documents that have governed the way in which we've been handling this problem since 2002. Sacramentorum Sanctitatis Tutela was the original document in 2001, which governed those, and with the experience that came out of the first 10 years of dealing with those cases. 2010, the norms were redone, and so consequently, the whole way in which sexual abuse was handled for minors was updated. And then, of course, we had the document from 2019 of Montse Alvarado, which expanded the ways in which sexual abuse could be treated as a delict, where it dealt with crimes against adults, vulnerable adults particularly. So in that regard, those are all things which we were already aware of. Now they have penalties attached to them, suggested penalties and so on, and fitted within the whole scope of the code. It becomes possible to know how a trial is to be held, how they are to be adjudicated, how they are to be defended, and so on.
And so that's the part that's new, the idea that there are penalties attached to these problems and yes.
Right.
So then why
the financial canon, the financial things that are in here are new. We have not seen those before.
And those weren't in the works for a long time?
Those have, I presume they are, as all law does, it grows out of experience. And some of the investigations and some of the things that are happening, particularly in the Holy See, would indicate that such things need to be done. There are other, the only thing that was in the old law dealt with alienation and illegal alienation, or selling church goods that one doesn't have the right to sell, is basically what that comes down to. But in this instance, it deals with other crimes that any person in the church can steal or use money improperly, ask for money inappropriately, and things of that nature. So all of those now are considered to be crimes. And what's interesting is, in setting the penalties, it also allows for financial penalties to be assessed, which is interesting in that regard.
And some of these penalties on sex abuse, why did it take so long to write and implement these changes?
I think that that we have been doing those. We have been imposing those penalties, and I think part of that is lived experience. The whole thing about the Me Too movement, obviously, here in the United States, has affected the kinds of accusations that are being brought forward, and the church is responding to that. In the past, the situations between adults were considered differently than situations involving an adult and a child, and that still continues to be the case. But I think that the situations between adults are now seen as more serious because you add in there the abuse of power.
Right. So then what does this mean, talking about abuse of power, for you and your brother bishops, and accountability on issues of negligence or cover-ups? Can these penalties then be applied to the bishops?
Yes. And it is interesting that in this code, there is a canon which actually says that if you are aware of an offense, which is a delict, which is a crime, however you want to translate that word, in any regard, whether it be sex abuse or financial impropriety or whatever, and you don't make that known to the person who could handle it, the bishop or whatever, then you have yourself, you could be assessed with a delict for that reason.
And can
You can
those be applied retroactively?
That there's prescription in the law, so it would have to have been within the period of prescription which the code establishes in this, and there are different rules concerning prescription in different sections of the code.
And Bishop Deeley, I know that some bishops have decided to coordinate with their local governments to pursue transparency, like working with attorneys general in prosecuting offenders and releasing reports. Will these changes affect that work in any way?
I think I would think in the United States, at least, all of us are working with attorneys general. I mean, I know in this diocese, Bishop Gary, who was my predecessor by two, in 2002, right in the midst of the sex abuse crisis at its beginning, asked the Attorney General of the state to come in and to examine the cases and do the kind of study which is being done in a number of dioceses now in a cooperative venture, which was very, very helpful to knowing where the cases were, how they were dealt with, and so on. So as a result, we kind of corralled it all. We have not had a substantiated allegation of sexual abuse in this diocese since 1993.
Well, thank God for that. Bishop Deeley, we really appreciate you coming on and clarifying this for us. Thank you.
You're welcome.